Hi, Karen Alari here with another Small Talk. Today I want to talk about painting leaves in silhouette. It can be a very effective and dramatic way to frame an image or focal point, and it's a lot of fun to do. There's just a few things that we want to remember when we paint our leaves in silhouette to give them a more natural and painterly look to them. This is a detail out of one of my paintings, and what I wanted to talk about is three things that you want to think about when you're painting these leaves in silhouette. You want to think about their shapes, their values, and then the techniques that you're going to use to paint them. And one of those techniques is going to be painting the negative space. So first of all, let's talk about their shapes. I think our first kind of impulse when we're drawing these type of silhouetted leaves is to come in and draw individual leaves and just draw them all over the tree and create individual leaves. And that's something that we don't really want to do. It's much more effective to look on your reference photo and find the large shapes, because these leaves are going to overlap with each other, and there's going to be a lot of larger shapes that are formed by these overlapping leaves. So you can see here's a large shape. Here's a shape that's a little bit smaller. Here's a shape that's even smaller yet. You'll find a few individual leaves right on the edges of your forms, but by and large, your shapes are going to be made up by these large individual shapes. And maybe those shapes will have a few sky holes in the middle of them like this, but they're going to make up a whole larger shape that has nice crisp edges to it, and those create that interesting lacy effect that we get with silhouetted leaves. And you can see that that's what I worked on doing over here in my painting. Was I looked for these larger shapes and I painted those in, connecting the shapes and altering the size of the shapes so that you have bigger shapes and you have smaller shapes. But this is just a really critical part of it. You can put in a few individual leaves, and then that will automatically tell the viewer that, oh, I understand that these are small leaves and this is the shape that they are. But look for those big shapes and those overlapping shapes. That's really going to help you. The second thing that people have a tendency to do is to choose one of the colors. And this is often because you're using a reference photo, and what it's done is you're shooting towards the light, so it's made everything in light very light, and then it's placed everything that's in shadow just as one big dark. And in reality, if you're out there and you're looking with your eyes, you're going to see some slight shifts in color. So what you want to do is you want to find that value. So instead of just taking this one color like I have here and creating all of your shapes in this one color, so that would be the equivalent of filling in this whole shape with one dark color. And that makes your painting look really flat and uninteresting. So instead of just using one color, what you're going to do is you're going to find that value. Here's your values from very light to very dark. So you want to stay within a value range that's right in this area, and you want to stay fairly grayed down. You don't want to stick any really bright colors in there, but you can change your color. So for example, in this one, here's my silhouetted leaf area, and here's this color, and then I've shifted over to a sort of a golden, greenish golden color, and then back to an orangish color, and a few that are a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, but they stay within a fairly narrow value range, but I've just changed the color up a little bit. And you can see that what that does is give you a feeling that there's individual leaves in here and there's something going on, but it keeps everything in silhouette and everything in shadow, and that's important in this type of painting. You want to keep everything in that same value and keep it all in shadow. You wouldn't want to take one of these leaves here that are in sunlight and pop it in over here, because that would ruin your feeling of the silhouetted leaves. In fact, this photograph I used had some that were catching the light a little bit, and you can notice that I did not use that in my painting because it would have taken away from the dramatic impact of the silhouetted leaves. So how do you get those shapes? Well, I generally use a small flat brush so that I can get a nice crisp edge to the shape. And often what I'll do is I'll paint in my shapes, following along and painting in the shapes, and then I will decide if I've left it airy enough. Oftentimes when you do this, you'll find that you've filled in too much with the dark and it's not looking silhouette-y anymore. So what you need to do is use negative painting to come back in and paint around your shapes in order to recreate them. Remember when you're painting in these, we call them sky holes, when you're painting these, to use a color that's a little bit darker than your actual sky color. So as you can see, here would be my sky color. It's clear up here on the value scale, but I'm going to come in and use a color that's further down. You can see the difference there? So instead of using the real light color, because if you do use that very light color, it's really going to stand out. I'll show you here. If I color in some sky holes with that really light color, they're going to stand out really strongly against the dark. And they'll be like little headlights in there, little shining headlights. And you don't want that. Instead, you want to have a color that's just a little bit darker, and then it will blend in more. And that's all you're going to do, is you're going to come in and with this color paint around your shapes. If you've gotten too big, if you've gotten your shapes too dark, you can just paint around them, add some sky holes, clean up your edges a little bit, but that's how you can create that lacy tracery effect. And you can do that even, you can do that with your branches. If you've painted in some branches and they've gotten too thick, you don't like how they're not looking very delicate, then you can just come in and paint with your sky color around the branches to thin them out a little bit. So that's how we do it with making our silhouetted leaves more successful. First of all, we look for the large shapes as we did over here, and we paint our leaf shapes in large shapes, not with a whole bunch of little individual leaves. Secondly, we choose our value. We don't go too dark, and then we just have some color shifts all in that same value to create texture and interest in your silhouette. And thirdly, if we've gotten too thick and heavy, you come back in with some sky color that is slightly darker than your exterior sky, and you paint around the shapes to lighten them up a little bit. And I think you'll find that this helps your silhouetted leaf shapes be very successful and dramatic in your painting. So that's it for this small talk, and I'll talk to you next time.